We are on to PPP number 20, and this one talks about mom guilt. Now, because I feel in this PPP that I feel I'm not saying like new things here. We haven't specifically talked about mom guilt. These are questions you always message me about that. And because of that, this month I brought in reinforcements. The podcast won't be released until the middle of this month. I'm having Sarah Kelly on and my friend Dee Dee Morris that love to talk about mom guilt because Sarah has great strategy and Dee Dee doesn't really have mom guilt, which it's really fun. So I brought in just extra people because I feel the stuff I've been kind of saying for years. Yeah. So these are my three takeaway of how to work with mom guilt and welcome mom guilt. And you can watch this PPP if you're not a mom as well. I think it's kind of like time strategy as well, and just kind of figuring out what you want and things like that. So I would love if you checked out on your dashboard, there is a workshop available that it's called, some of you have done it already. It's called Tending to the Art of your Home Yoga Practice. I mentioned it here. It's something you might want to look into if you're really interested about time strategies and kind of space strategies as well. And if that for you is still always a struggle, that workshop it's about 2 hours and really lays it down in terms of tips and tricks. So for me, mom guilt really is more about, not taking time for ourselves because we're moms and, we give. And then there's the other part, which is I'm finally doing what I love. And then I feel so much guilt I'm not enjoying what I'm doing. So for me, I'm coming from these two angles when I'm doing that PPP. And again, I can't wait for you to hear the podcast because we really expand on our lens on, other moms and their struggles and, their strategies with that. So for me, my first one it's about asking for help. It's a bit of a theme here at Chiquis. I think we've learned that asking for help means we are failures. Also, the more I reflect on this, the more I find it's almost like a lot of trust, right? To ask for help, we really need to trust the person, like they earned our asking for help type of thing. But nonetheless, when I feel overwhelmed, I ask for help. I've gotten really good at asking for help over the years. Obviously, for me, my closest person is my husband. And somehow he's never guilty doing things for himself. And so, he's taught me a lot in that area. And I need to voice it. And when he can't help me in whatever it is, I've been known to hire sitters. I pay for help. So I've had sitters, like I'm in the house and there's sitters like in the house, or I get them to go bike with Isaiah down the streets, or, in earlier times, I got sitters so I could sleep for a couple hours, but my son is 9 now, so it's not the same. But asking for help is as big as, for me, asking for help is self-care. And asking for help is not a sign of a failure. If anything, it's just another way to exercise your voice. It's an exercise in, gathering your power, and an exercise in priorities as well. And so to practice that, and in the same manner that's you would tell somebody if you can help them, somebody will tell you, if they can't. So asking for help is like my first thing in terms of, finding time for ourselves as mom, as women. And yeah, and if the mom guilt is like a big thing, asking, perhaps it's a therapist help you need to talk it out. Like, you need to look at your past, or you need to debunk, just how you feel so bad. And I have a story about that after. Okay, so maybe you've heard this story before, but that's my story with self-care. For an entire year, about 4 years ago, my word was self-care. I'd gotten to the point where I knew deep down that if I didn't put myself first, if I would get sick. Like, it gotten that bad. And Isaiah must have been 3 or 4 at the time. And I decided to go to France. I was asked to go teach yoga in France for 2 weeks. So that was the first ever trip I ever took by myself, as a married woman. And it was a really big deal. I had never left my family for more than a weekend or something. And the mom guilt was really at the highest it had ever been. Like, I was in France, but I was like I felt just so guilty being there. And that trip for me really was the turnover, in that I was really able to break that vicious cycle that I had somehow created for myself. And for me, I need to almost like extrapolate myself from my environment so that I can see objectively, and also experience that people will survive without me being around. And, it's good for them, that I'm not around, in terms of, independence, and, and that I'm not bad for wanting these things. Like, I think at the root of it for me was like, I'm a failure, or like, I'm a bad mom, I'm a bad person. And I was a walking mom guilt in France. And I think it was like the quarter in, like, almost at the end of it, that I finally could, because I had learned to just walk with it and be with it at its highest. I had just welcomed it. I mean, what else was I going to do? Because I was there, my plane was scheduled back then. So there's something to be said about that. And I want to mention here, like, obviously you don't need to go on a trip to, work on healing your mom guilt or anything else. But I work with a lot of women now, and a lot of us do need that. We need to literally extrapolate ourselves so that we can see more clearly how things are affecting us and others around us. I have a client, she rents a room every couple hours, every, Wednesday night, whatever. And she goes there and she paints, like, by herself. Like, that's the only time she gets. And that's been working for her. So, that might be something to look into. The other thing I realized, when I came back, it was this beautiful, like, I love that my son sees me doing things for myself, because that teaches him how to take care of him, in the long term. So there was really a turnaround for me for that trip, but it was like a really harsh, 2 weeks. It really felt like an initiation of sorts, in terms of dealing with my mom guilt. So yeah, that's my story. And remember, that was something I worked on for the entire year. Like, not just for a little bit here and there. Like, that was my last thing, the last takeaway, or is to just not be so hard on yourself. There's a quote I've shared with a few of you that private messaged me already, and it is, where we think we need more discipline, we actually need more self-love. And to remember the seasons of your life. Could I have gone to France when I had 2 infants? Like, no. But I think there's somewheres, even back then when I had 2 little babies, there was somewheres that there's somewheres that I had power. I could claim that power for me. I think it's important, to mention, it's really important to mention to not be so hard on yourselves, that there's, time for everything, and to know what you want. What would a perfect day look like for you as a mom, as a woman, and claim that. How are you going to claim that? To figure it out. Okay, this worked last week, but this didn't work, and to move along with that. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Ask for help, and perhaps look at the bigger picture, extrapolate yourself, look in a bigger view, breathe with it, live with it. It's a muscle. Guilt is a muscle, self-care is a muscle. And I cannot wait for you to hear the podcast. It's going to be later this month with Sarah Kelly and Dee Dee Morris. And perhaps I have one last secret guest, but I love you. Namaste. Bye.